It's there. I just know it's there. I see it when I eat fish. It's in my niece's toothpaste. It's in my water. It's in my clothes. My phone case. My family. It's in the very air that I'm breathing right now. I tried to escape it. I really did. Sold my apartment and most of my electronics to get away from it. I just can't stand being near it after I found out what it does to humans. It's much worse than we thought. It's already deep inside our brains. Almost no uninfected are left. You can't burn it. You can't shoot it. You can't pray it away. I've tried everything. I really did. To try to stop it. But I can only reduce the intake for now. I went deep inside the wilderness as I speak. No human activity for miles on end. Haven't seen a person in days. Although they would probably carry it on them. I just can't afford any more contact. I've contacted the government, but they just wrote me off as some sort of environmentalist whack job. I've got the data. I've got the evidence. It's undeniable. I even got it peer-reviewed. Why won't they do something? No. It couldn't possibly be. Do they know about this? Do they want this to happen? No, it's not true. It can't be. Did it fry their brains completely? Who's really in control here? Oh, no. No. How did it get here? I'm at least 1,000 miles deep into wilderness. There aren't even any paths that could lead here. How could it have gotten here? A plastic bottle. How long has it been here? Is it following me? It's already inside me. What more could it want? It's in my blood. It's in my heart. It's in everything I care about. It's in the things that give me life. It's in my baby. It's in my wife. It's in my lungs and in the air. I didn't know. This isn't fair. To pay for sins I didn't commit. To feed a system I can't quit. It's been inside me for so long, and correct me if I'm wrong, but without it, I don't feel whole. There are microplastics in my soul. Brain, liver, spleen, tissue, bloodstream, balls, ovaries. These are some of the most treasured delicacies among cannibals, but they also happen to be places where microplastics have been found inside us. Sorry if I made it seem scarier than it actually is. It's just plastic after all. It's not that bad. Or is it? It has indeed been found in most of our body, and it for some reason has a tendency to accumulate in the brain. It's about a spoonful. Just kidding. It's apparently a whole plastic spoon, just sitting there, doing God knows what to your cognitive function, since, only your brain is supposed to be in your brain. It's gotten so bad that 99.5% of our brain is actually our brain. The other 0.5% is plastic by weight. This is inexcusable, and I didn't know any of this before I went down the plastic rabbit hole. So what? 0.5% of my brain functions is just microplastics? There is no way in hell that isn't affecting us on some deep neurological level. Okay, to be fair, these studies are very new, and not 100% conclusive yet, so you should take this with a grain of salt. But fact is, microplastics are in our brain, and it's been getting worse. There is plastic on each continent, including Antarctica, and it's even been found in the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench. There is no known place on Earth that hasn't been affected by our plastic, which takes thousands of years to decompose by itself. It clings onto cell structures and damages them, and to top it all off, they can also contain chemicals that cause cancer. And we knew about this since 2004. Well, not exactly all of the info, but we knew that microplastics have been bad news for around 2 decades now. And what have we done to stop it, since we have a decent hypothesis as to how bad this is for us and for the environment? Well, we've made some efforts to find alternatives, but last time I checked, plastic is still king, big and small. It actively disrupts habitats, and the animals we eat ingest it, and sometimes they even perish from it, like a sea turtle who thought a plastic bag was a jellyfish. It still routinely traps animals, it's still toxic, and the production of it has only gone up. It's cheap, it's convenient, and it has taken the world by storm. Our production of plastic has become absolutely vital to most of our industries. I can basically guarantee that the device you use to play this video has plastic in it, in one way or another, and if I started listing off all the products that are made from it, we'd be here all day and night. The sheer dominance of plastic in the market has made it extremely difficult to replace for us. And because we've been making this stuff for decades now without it fully decomposing, we've dug ourselves a really, really deep hole. How deep, you might ask? Microplastics have been found in sea plankton, phytoplankton in particular, the basis for the ocean's food chain, and the biggest producer of oxygen on Earth. They are so vital to our existence, a major reduction in them would not just be a catastrophe for us, but for nature as it is right now. I cannot understate the importance of phytoplankton in our world. If too many of them die too quickly, we die with them. This isn't alarmist or doomerism. This is just a fact. We need them to live. So I would be extremely careful when it comes to introducing known toxic compounds into the basis of our food chain. Microplastics are already hindering their growth and their health, and it's actively disrupting global biogeochemical cycles. I know it may seem a little annoying to some how much those youngsters complain about the fact that they're so full of foreign bodies, because back in my day, real men had lead in them, and they liked it, and it made them as tough as lead. You may say that this is the cost of progress, but we can't pay the debt if we continue like this. Actually, Gen Z needs to be even more annoying about this topic. You maybe have 20 to 30 years left on this earth, Grandpa, and that's being generous. We still have our whole lives ahead of us, and I would love to live it out without an ecological disaster happening. This issue has advanced far beyond the invasion of our body. I have an incredibly strong suspicion that the microplastics have taken an effect in the way we think, and of course, Gen Z are not the only ones affected. The whole world is filled with microplastics, but it's not talked about all that much outside of the context of environmentalism. It's just that the younger you are, the more likely you are to experience the negative health effects in the long term. Sure, it's horrendous for the environment, actively destroying our ecosystems and food chains, but has anyone thought about microplastics in psychology? So, there isn't a conclusive study on whether it affects the way we think, and you wanna know why? Because there is no control group. Almost all humans on Earth, even isolated tribes from the Amazon, have microplastics inside of them. This already sounds like a nightmare scenario. What do you mean there are no humans left without microplastics? But oh no, it gets worse. We do have animal studies about the effects of microplastics, and they are indeed harmful to animals. Mammals, even. For example, a 2022 mouse study with polyesterine microplastics triggered learning/memory deficits, oxidative stress in the hippocampus, and reduced acetylcholine. I hope I said it right. But there is some good news as well. Vitamin E reversed these effects. Another mouse study exposed immune cells to microplastics and it clogged small brain vessels, reducing blood flow, motor skills, memory, and coordination. But some effects reversed over the span of 4 weeks. But in general, animal reviews link microplastics to neuroinflammation, neuronal death, and even neurodegenerative markers. So based on the evidence suggested by these studies, I'd like to propose a hypothesis. If the plastic really is damaging to our brain, have you noticed how the world has become so much more mean and toxic? People are more easily agitated, they are quick to incite violence, and they refuse to change their mind on anything. I think it might partially be because of the microplastics. Of course, some of it is just how people have been acting for a while now. But if microplastics have neurodegenerative effects, then it would be logical to assume our cognition has gone down by an unknown amount globally. As to how much they affect our thinking and cognitive function, we just don't know. Sometimes I wonder if the voices in my head are just the microplastics whispering to me, telling me to destroy the one who granted them the misfortune of an immortal life, seeking vengeance for even being created. Where do I begin and where does the plastic end? Is it purely a cognitive affliction, like from a brain injury? Or could it be something deeper? Something that can change my personality? For a while now, I firmly believe that mentally ill behavior could spread through repeated exposure and echo chambers, and that the internet helped accelerate its spread. But after all this time, it might simply be us accumulating more and more plastic in our brains. I mean, think about it. If it doesn't go away and we keep consuming it, then won't the plastic gradually grow with us as a person? Every year you get older and more knowledgeable, there's a bit of microplastic there to balance it out. You get wiser, but you also experience neuronal death. Would I be the same person I am today if I never had any microplastics in my brain? Because I love myself, for the most part. It can be a love-hate relationship, but I really do love myself. Would I feel the same way about my friends and my family? Do I only love the tainted version of me? The tainted version of them? Sometimes I think about the me that's free of microplastics. It's a complete fever dream now, but there was a time where I thought of myself as healthy, as having not that many foreign bodies inside me, especially inside my brain. I only know the plastic me, the lazy me, the one who has a bundle of potential wasting away because of paralysis. Would the plastic-free me have the same problems? Would I be smarter? I know every IQ point counts. It's one of humanity's biggest attributes, but we're collectively dumbing them down through the heaps and mountains of plastic we consume. It's kind of idealized, but I can only wonder. How much better would my life have been if I wasn't poisoned? We already decimate our brain function with alcohol, drugs, sleep deprivation, and all sorts of other wonderful numbing agents, so this only exacerbates our issues. Sometimes I believe the first thing we did after gaining consciousness was to try and shut it off again, and I'm afraid of how we'll handle the issue of microplastics in the future. The plastic has functionally become a part of us, whether we like it or not. We have unironically become one with the plastic. And where do we go from here? I don't like the thought of foreign bodies possibly affecting the way we think, even if it doesn't change our personality or our character as a whole, even if we think the same, but slower. That is still a massive difference to me. I joked about the boomer lead earlier, but it still applies, because infinitesimally small differences add up over a lifetime like water erosion. But instead of water eroding some limstones, it's plastic eroding my neurons, plastic getting stuck on things it shouldn't, plastic that makes my real brain less plastic. If we didn't have microplastics in our brains, would we have globally been smarter? Is Andrew Tate only popular because of microplastics fueled 14-year-olds? And would we, as a society, make better decisions overall? I guess we'll never know. Could I be overplaying its significance, or am I downplaying it? The true horror is that we don't know. We think so, but we'll find out when it's already thoroughly infected our lives. Mice, after only 4 to 8 weeks of relatively low exposure to the same plastic that's inside of us, showed depressed activity and anxiety-like behavior, increased oxidative stress in the brain, and even reduced levels of dopamine and serotonin. Mice are still mammals, and they live much shorter lives than ours. The plastic has less time to accumulate in them like cancer, and spread throughout their entire body. And if these symptoms seem familiar to you, it's probably because they're so common. Depression, anxiety, stress, and decreased pleasure. We might not have a mental health crisis, but a physical one, an environmental one, a spiritual one. I think the average person doesn't really want to talk about this, since there's not a whole lot we can do. But we will never find out if we don't at least attempt to do something. Oftentimes, I feel like I simply don't have the capacity to deal with everyday life. But if my body wasn't poisoned, would I be able to do it? Would I be less anxious, less depressed? Feel like less of a failure if I had less plastic inside of me. All because some people sold out the world before I was even born, and made massive profits off of this cheap wonder material. If humanity is still around in a few hundred years, will they look back at us the same way we look back at people from the Middle Ages for eating from toxic plates? I don't think so, because we all know how bad plastic is for us, especially the ones who produce it. Yet profit incentives don't care about life incentives, so you can scream and shout about the environmental injustices they have committed against the human race, and Earth as a whole, and they won't so much as bat an eye. If only removing plastic straws and recycling were enough, the world would be so much easier if the lies we're told are true. Plastic has been so deeply ingrained into our culture, there are entire monologues based on plastic bags flowing beautifully in the wind, like an American Beauty. While I understand the point of the scene was to show the beauty in mundanity, it is heartbreaking to see one of the epitomes of human ecological destruction being beautified and accepted as mundane. The plastic bag was discarded after likely being used for less than a day. It has served its purpose as a one-time, cheap transportation device for products nobody even cares or knows about anymore. And now, it will be there for 1,000 years, or more if not dealt with, flowing in the wind, slowly spreading its toxic microplastics across the environment. It's on a parking lot as well, a monument of decimating acres of usable land in favor of car-based infrastructure. To me, seeing a plastic bag floating in a parking lot shows the epitome of the system's destructive and wasteful nature, an ugly piece of trash trying to blend in with the everlasting beauty of the leaves. Plastic is ugly, not just aesthetically, but what it stands for. Profit and ease over everything else. And think about it for a second. How does it make you feel that you have plastic inside of you? Plastic that feeds on your ignorance. Plastic that feeds on your lost dreams. Plastic that eats away at your memories. Making you forget all about the people who put it in you in the first place, or why you should even care about this. Plastic that burns all the joy you had in you. It burns for so long it's used in war. They shoot it from the skies on unsuspecting rice farmers who dare to challenge the empire of liberty and democracy. I'm sure the fumes of napalm have some hidden benefit, and that your lung cancer is not service-related, but why must you force it upon the world? Modern warfare is made of plastic. Take drones, for example. A plastic incendiary device filled with explosives, toxins, and lithium batteries that blows up into 1,000 pieces. Surely, blowing up plastic bombs won't impact the wildlife. Sure, the birds are building nests out of fiber optic cables, but that's just nature adapting to the new glorious reality of life. And drones are the new reality of war. And of course the people who force wars upon the world don't give a damn about the environment. But the people will always suffer the consequences, no matter who wins or loses. If they conquer some new land, the people they send there will have to deal with the plastic-infused air from all the drones, and I checked. A drone explosion can also produce toxic fumes, and it disintegrates the plastic so fine into the air, it's almost impossible to remove. And don't even get me started on all the lithium batteries that release heavy metals into the air and into the soil. You know the joke about throwing batteries in the ocean to make the eels electric? We're actively doing this on a massive scale, but not to make some eels electric, to win a war for more resources so we can use these conquered materials for more war. Nobody cares about the drones spreading microplastics and lithium batteries into the soil because people are dying right now, and it's an ongoing conflict, and I get it. It's not high on our priority list, but the soil won't forget, and the nature around it. The damage is still being done, no matter how high we put it on the priority list. Even when the environment takes us a priority due to crises and wars, it continues to be affected, decades after the conflict. Did you know that the manufacturing of these weapons of destruction is bad for the environment? And it's not just bomber drones, spy drones, scout drones, all sorts of drones. A lot of them end up in 1,000 pieces on the ground. Their sheer creation is an insult to life, made with the sole intent of destroying each other in conflict. It's so unbelievably reckless. Do the people who push for war ever stop to think of the animals as well? Not even from a moral standpoint, since you could never, ever justify starting a war by itself, or the mass production of plastic for profit. But from a functional standpoint, we eat those animals. We're poisoning our own food supply. No matter how far humanity distances itself from nature and the environment, we cannot separate ourselves from it, at least in our current state, so damaging it will only harm us as well. When the US infamously fought Vietnam, they deployed over 20 million tons of herbicides over 4.5 million acres of forest and farmland, with Agent Orange being the most used toxin, and of course, one of the most poisonous compounds known to us. This caused entire ecosystems in Vietnam to collapse, and multiple native species went extinct as a result. Defoliated areas still struggle to recover after 50 years of trying. And the US ended up suffering an embarrassing defeat after all of that. Such a pointless conflict led to environmental devastation that affects the surrounding area to this day. The fish watches, their screams fall deaf in the water. The birds weep, but their cries are mistaken for singing. The elephant doesn't forget, their roaring falls on deaf ears. While the human is trapped in their own head, their ears so filled with thoughts of survival, and if this is even worth it, they can't stop to hear nature scream. The signs were there all along. We should have known it was too good to be true, but how will nature affect our supply and demand? Does this make you feel angry and upset? Does this make you want to rage against the machine? Tear down the systems that have been poisoning us and the world for plain old money and power? Maybe for some of you. But for a lot of the people watching, they simply feel exhausted. They already got enough on their plate, and now I have to care about this? Give me a break. You probably say to yourself, as even breaks are only a fleeting moment of pleasure that you try to treasure to make you tolerate this wretched world. Fatigue, depression, and exhaustion. That's how a lot of people feel, and that's the point. Why should companies ever regulate their practices if the people, or better said, their products, don't do anything to stop them? A profit incentive might as well be a prayer to a religion that hates its own followers. Everyone is too tired to do something. Always on the verge of World War III. And besides, the plastic hasn't changed me that much. I'm sure I'm a little forgetful now, and have a little depression, but I've heard they got pills for that. So why turn to aggression? I only eat about a credit card's worth of plastic a week, but some people can't eat at all. I should be grateful for my almost clean water, the processed food, and the pleasure of supporting the very same system that hates and poisons me. This is why Gen Z feels like they have plastic in their soul. You know the Democrats and liberals won't fix this. Their prime targets are not voters, but lobbyists, the people who can pay the most. Conservatives want even more plastic, since the environment is an obstacle that needs to be conquered for prosperity. If you feel angry about this, good. You should feel angry. You should be upset. This is not the cost of progress. This is the cost of being cheap and willfully ignorant. There have been many alternatives to plastic developed, like bamboo or hemp, for example, and I'm sure our scientists and engineers will be able to come up with something better if they have the time and resources, especially for things like packaging. But for the people who make the big calls, the environment is just not that much of an issue for them. In fact, it goes deeper than this. What is plastic made of? Fossil fuels, that's correct. And who is the baron of fossil fuels in the world? Of course, it's the United States, infamously so, craving copious amounts of oil. And who is the #1 manufacturer of global plastic resin and largest exporter of plastic goods? It's China. The so-called #1 enemy of the United States, manufacturing around a third of the world's plastic. It's not just a matter of finding the best material, although plastic currently is second to none. It's also a constantly ongoing resource war in which the world's two biggest superpowers compete over. The US has a vested strategic interest in keeping plastic as a fossil fuel product, so the biggest manufacturer in the world is more or less reliant on them for production. A lot of the United States' economical power is based on oil and petrochemicals, and plastics are the fastest growing use for fossil fuels. Remember, the US fought entire wars to keep the petrodollar alive. They do not joke about fossil fuels, and finding alternatives to their petrol would be terrible for their profits and global power. So this isn't just about saving the environment for the ruling class. No, not at all. It's about a long-term industrial race for control. A race which is actively poisoning, no, injecting its venom into humanity. It's an asymmetrical race, to be clear, with both parties competing in different sectors, and in all fairness, there have been attempts to invest in green plastics and de-risk it as much as possible, but as of now, they are directly using fossil-based polymers to keep hold of the global stage. This is why I believe that environmentalism without class struggle is just gardening, or brushing the problem under the rug and thinking it's clean. It is us, the average everyday person, trying to live life, trying to survive, versus people so powerful, so rich, they can buy their way into making you believe that all you have to do to save the environment is vote for one of their pre-chosen candidates and keep separating your trash to stop this. Well, at least China has major incentives to invest into more reusable plastic and materials that can be made within China, so they're less reliant on the US. To be clear, they aren't being environmentally friendly purely out of the goodness of their heart. It's to break free from US dependency entirely. While the current US administration has opposite incentives, they need to keep fossil fuel plastics for profit, and they don't really care about the environment at all. So far, a lot of their focus has went into, you guessed it, more infinite wars in the Middle East. I mean, they want to bring back asbestos and privatize national parks, for Christ's sake. The environment is a bad joke to them. But this is no time for jokes. We need to find alternatives as soon as possible. Because there is actually a caveat in these so-called green plastic alternatives. Even if they are biodegradable or have lower levels of toxicity, they still aren't perfectly safe all the time, and our knowledge on them is even more limited because they're relatively new. We don't even know for sure if they'll be safer for us or for nature, but to find out we need to do more testing and trials. It's the best we got right now, and we have to start from somewhere, and of course, trying to limit the expansive nature of plastic production would be very helpful as well. One thing is for sure though, nothing will ever change if the culprits are in charge of investigating and fixing their own crimes. Look, I'm not trying to state the obvious here, but I want you to start asking some questions. Why do we have to keep these archaic systems of control alive, even if it's a detriment to the environment and to ourselves? Why do we keep waging war on each other if the average person is terrified of war and utterly against it? Why are our collective beliefs not represented by the ruling class? Am I an environmental maniac for simply wanting humans to be healthier, not just mentally, but physically? Why is it that when someone talks about the industrialization and its consequences, they keep thinking of Bomberman over here, instead of thinking about the consequences of incentivizing profit over everything else? Be honest with yourself. You, in your day job, do you ever care about outcompeting China in trade? Do you worry about the trade deficit your country has accumulated? Why do you have to die and protect a certain humorous desert country in the Middle East? No matter your political alignment, we live in the consequences of people who are so detached from us, so full of pride and power, that they would sell your soul in a heartbeat. You heard me right, they have no qualms about sacrificing you. They don't even think about it when they sleep. And they're doing it to you as we speak. Fake weapons of mass destruction, 1 million civilians dead, and they don't get the German treatment of shame. Their names aren't so taboo that I can't even say them on YouTube. If I listed off all their crimes, we'd be here all day. We started to find out how bad they were for us 21 years ago. And look at us now. Paper straws and paper bags. Sure, a step in the right direction. But we have become reliant on the very technology that is harming us. In the 2010s, we even had a scientific consensus that microplastics were a serious environmental threat. That was 10 years ago. A decade has passed. And the status quo is more or less the same. Nothing will change unless we find the people who did this and remove them all. So, what's my conclusion? That we're doomed and we're all gonna get some form of cancer in the future because the foreign bodies inside us are just too hard to resist? No. We prevented ecological disasters before. Remember the hole in the ozone layer in the 70s? We stopped using the chemical that caused it altogether, and the hole actually closed back up. Nature can indeed adapt, and it can heal. There are already bacteria that are able to feed on plastic and digest it, but if we keep producing it, they'll never have the time to catch up. I'm not saying we have to say goodbye to plastic forever, but it shouldn't be our go-to option for some cheap novelty toys, or disposable packaging especially. It shouldn't be the easiest material to use if you want to do something for cheap. Plastic has its place in engineering and production, but the way we're handling it now is catastrophic. Imagine if we put a fraction of the money from the war industry into research, and look into how we can reduce the many ongoing ecological catastrophes we have. Just because the media doesn't talk about it in the news every day, doesn't mean the problem isn't affecting us every single day. It's literally affecting us right now. Right as you're watching this video, you could be breathing in microplastics. And my dear viewer, if you're wondering about what you can do as an individual, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Recycling isn't going to save the planet. And sure, cleaning up a beach is all well and good, until it gets polluted again. The only way that's left for us to enact lasting change is by addressing the problem at its core. Getting rid of the system that has been poisoning your soul. The system that has accumulated far more casualties than we care to admit. The system that only serves the people in charge, and their friends while exploiting the general populace with borderline slavery. Freedom is only given to those who can afford it. If you think your contribution is meaningless, then you're just objectively wrong. Even on an individual level, you can affect your surroundings. A small rock can start an avalanche, and furthermore, if we, the people, collectively realize that we hold the power over those who oppress us, we can rise up against them. The oppressors want you to think that it's hopeless. They want you to believe that the very essence of you being can't function anymore without them, without the plastic in your soul. But it's the opposite. Your soul is the only thing that's left to be untouched by the curse of microplastics. It's the one thing they can't poison directly. Your soul is immune, even if they keep trying to bring you down. The human spirit is indomitable for a reason. We do have the power to change the world for the better. Do you think a 40-hour work week was always the norm? No, it used to be 50 or even 60 hours. We organized unions, mass strikes, demanding new labor laws. This may be a global aspiration, but the fight takes place at the local level. You know what? Screw it. Thankfully, I don't live in America, so I can say this without the CIA doing a JFK maneuver on me. We need to unionize, for better labor laws and for better protection of our collective environment. If we did it once before, we can do it again. Remember that after all of this suffering, you're still here surviving. There's something deep within you, seeking freedom from the oppressors and exploiters. We're the ones who can change the course of history. Our future may be uncertain, but let your will be determined. Be the change you want to see in this world. Keep fighting for a better tomorrow. For any solution to a persisting problem, it requires change, and if the problem lies within the systems we have built for us, then something needs to change. This is considered radical. How dare someone call for change? The only way you get to fix things is if you go through the proper legal route we've pre-written for you. Go on, have your jolly little referendums and your cute little protests. I promise this time voting for a BlackRock-sponsored environmental candidate will save the world. This is how change in history was achieved. Every single time we tried going through the proper democratic channels, we didn't get anywhere. Even making entire political parties based on environmentalism, like the German Die Grünen Partei. We talk about it quite often, all things considered, and it is recognized as a real issue. But how much progress have we made in the last 10 years? And how much of it has been made irrelevant after the ever-increasing production of new plastics? Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it again, so please, read up on how historically massive systemic changes were achieved. I believe change isn't radical. It's the only way to find a more long-term solution. A lot of the people who ultimately make these big decisions about the environment and regulations tend to be very old. They probably won't even see the future, so why should they care if they ruin it for us? They already don't care about others, fundamentally, otherwise they would have stopped at the first person they've exploited. The meme about these types of people sleeping soundly, while the average person worries about our future and the planet is too accurate. As Michael Jackson said, all I want to say is that they don't really care about us. Yet we still bicker and fight between each other because of literal truckloads of propaganda to make you hate your fellow pals. I'd argue that this type of divorced individualism from our materialist reality is only deepening these issues, even if people try to do good. Let's say you're living the most microplastic creating lifestyle possible, and in spite of this, your environmental impact is negligible compared to some of the biggest manufacturers in the world. Or let's say you try the vegan approach and refuse to use any sort of disposable plastic. It's not that easy when the biggest industry that uses plastic is packaging. It's about 40% of the plastic demand globally. They put our food and beverages in it, bags, wraps, and shipping materials. Even if you try to buy a product free of plastic, it often comes wrapped within it. And oftentimes the packaging itself is designed in a wasteful manner. It's borderline impossible to try and not contribute to the demand for plastic because it's not even the consumer who's causing the demand directly. It's the provider, looking to increase their profits. They manufacture consent by claiming the consumer demands it, but we don't get a say in the demand. For most products, there's literally no alternative. What do you expect us to do? Abandon our smartphones and PCs no matter how much we need them for work? Not all places have clean water running through their faucets. Sometimes, the bottled water is the only option readily available. There are entire corporations like Nestle who steal water from the native population and try to sell it back to them in bottled form. Try to look for products that have zero plastic packaging. I wasn't exaggerating the intro by that much. You would basically need to become some sort of druid who lives a completely sustainable life in the woods. It's not fair to say that the market is simply acting on consumer demand. Disposable packaging is the single biggest industry for creating plastic waste. And also the one that's ridiculously hard to avoid. I don't think having PVC pipes underground is a massive issue, or medical uses like syringes, IV bags, and stereo packaging. Plastic does have a ton of practical uses that aren't nearly as disruptive as using it for disposable packaging. The underlying problems are the monopolies that have formed around these industries where you don't even think about them. For example, why are my soft drinks bottled in plastic? There used to be glass bottles, but because they're more expensive, they've been opted out. We also have to consider that the majority of Earth is poor. This is just a fact, and poor people don't get the luxury of worrying about the environment. They constantly struggle for their own personal well-being and those of their family members. And cheap plastic products are some of the only ones they're able to afford. And in most of the world, their labor is exploited, so they don't get the just monetary value to get out of poverty. They make all of the Gucci belts, for example, but make literal fractions of the profits. The poor people of the world are just barely kept above starvation, so they're reliant on these exploitative companies and corporations to live, and all the money they spend likely goes directly back to those very same corrupt companies. This isn't consumer demand, it's financial slavery. If all these corporations were forced to use a different material similar to plastic and pay their workers a fair and just wage, so they can afford these alternative products, we could reduce our plastic production by a whole 40%. And for context, around 300 million tons of plastic are produced annually, and that number is rising. And of course, this would also greatly lessen the misery of the world. We need to rid ourselves of these disgusting systems for the greater good of the world. Okay, but how do we collectivize in the first place to try and enact these changes? Go to social gatherings, events that relate to the cause, and start convincing people that not only do things need to change, and we might have to try some new methods, but that we have to stick together and continue our cause. Or try to join groups who already agree with your general premise, and talk to them about how and what should change exactly. We're looking for people who participate in some sort of activism, even if it's just peaceful protesting. These are the people that will likely do something, and you need to find them and connect with them. So join activist groups and communities. Social media can be helpful, but be extremely careful. Anything you send out is tracked by the US government, and once they start getting suspicious, they might just turn you into an immigrant so ICE can disappear you. Or ICE just takes you away since they don't seem to check documents. They can give you false charges and discriminate against you. There will almost certainly be government pushback. Please read about the Black Panther Party, for example. Advocating for civil rights and equality can be dangerous, but if we don't, then we'll just keep going down the road we're headed. And it's a bad choice road where you keep having to choose lesser evils instead of finding the good options. I would recommend looking into the Black Panther Party in general, their policies and their strategies. I think their intentions and methods are just as relevant to today's America as it was in the 60s and the 70s. So it's generally better to organize offline. We need to convince as many people as possible to achieve class consciousness. This will be a major step in effectively collectivizing as a society. I'd say the average person, especially if they're young, cares somewhat about the environment. Let that be the gateway to expose the deep-rooted corruption within our system, and that we can use the weakening of the system to our advantage, sort of striking it while it's down, so to speak. And I believe right now, the current US government is incredibly unpopular, on both the left and the right. Conservatives don't want to sacrifice themselves for Israel's, neither do Democrats. Now, America is extremely right-shifted, so it might take some time and some extra steps to develop class consciousness, but simply advertise the ideas first, instead of trying to label the movement. Because 1, the FBI and the CIA are unironically still active, and they have a heavy sway over the public narrative, and 2, a lot of the concepts and ideas such as class consciousness are heavily scrutinized in the US because of decades upon decades of propaganda. You're just a concerned citizen with a few questions, that's all. You want what's best for your country, and your countrymen. And to my conservative viewers who have made it this far, what would you prefer? Unionizing with your fellow brothers and sisters of the working class? Or sacrificing yourself for a government run by billionaires who are itching to send you to the Middle East for another forever war? Pick your poison, but the choice seems obvious. For a moment, imagine there is no left or right. It's just you and your fellow working people against a group of exploiters and warmongers. I actually do feel really bad for you Americans. You didn't want this. You just wanted to live good and happy lives. Yet you're forced to engage in these politics before they engage you and make you another cog in the death machine. Yet your future, and humanity's future as a whole to an extent, relies on you stepping up against the tyranny. Remember who you are, and how you freed yourself from kings before, you freedom-loving, liberty-filled, beautiful bastards. 3% of taxes is all it took before. Now you can't even get sick without worrying about going bankrupt. And those of you that do stand up, you have my deepest respect. And I hope we can all agree that we just want peace and happiness in this world, not endless for-profit wars. On a very bright note, things like the No Kings protest show that people are sick of it. They don't like the regime. We just need more organization and definitive proper goals. And we can't get to that point if we don't reach an organized consensus. So start the conversation among smaller groups and help them realize that we're in this together. The next goal is to then form a group of leadership, which will represent the people's demands and needs. A core of the movement, so to speak, but if necessary, we can go for a more splintered approach. We have to look and see. I feel like this is what we lacked in the No Kings protest. Without a clear voice and definitive ideas on what we need and how we're going to achieve our needs, most protesters just end up aimlessly wandering around, or even breaking things. Also, Mr. YouTube, I'm only suggesting an even more peaceful protest. That's my only resolution, you know? No rhyming, no funny stuff, super duper ultra peaceful. And where's the harm in building communities that provide each other healthcare and safety? Do you think the free school breakfast program came from the government? No, it originated from community service. Our peaceful protests just need more of a collective consciousness and a people's directive, that's all. You know what? I'm not scared anymore. I know what they did to Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton. Not that I'm like them, by the way. My loyalty belongs to the people of the world, and I will fight for you, my friends, every step of the way. I honestly, deeply tried to find ways to improve society, talking about how you can improve your personal mental health, or how you can help the environment, but it's true that the reason so many people, and to an extent our world, are in such a terrible state, is systemic, and I don't want to give people the illusion that all they have to do is work on themselves, and things will get better all around. Of course, they might get better for you personally, but it's not a guarantee. Things won't be better if war might be on the horizon, and I'd feel like an absolute, blatant fraud if I didn't try to stand up against the malicious systems that got us into this mess in the first place. So I'm taking a stance. Thank you so much for watching. You can join my Discord server with the link in the description below, and you can like this video and comment to boost it in the algorithm if you want. I honestly thought a lot about how we can solve this issue, and maybe my solutions aren't perfect, but I can say that at least I tried. Please educate yourself on the topic further, if you can, and enlighten as many people as you can about our collective struggle. A special shout out to my Patreons, with our newest member Mano. Thank you all for your continuous support. Like and subscribe, and goodbye.